The story is set at Karid Academia, the world of a popular fantasy game known for its many different storylines and endings. No matter which route the story takes, one character always ends up standing in the way of the main heroes, an incompetent troublemaker named Iggs Bandil. As the eldest son of the earl who commands the capital city's knights, Iggs has enough social standing to cause serious damage, and he uses every bit of it to commit one terrible act after another. This path leads him to one inevitable end. In every single version of the story, the main characters kill him by running him through with a forest of blades. His death is not a possibility, but an absolute certainty. Someone has just been reincarnated into his body. Only a week has passed since waking up in this new life, and the young Ix is already lying in bed with the full weight of his situation pressing down on him. School starts in 3 years, and with it, the events of the game begin moving. That gives him exactly 3 years before the main characters show up, and his scripted death becomes due. He turns to the young maid sitting at his bedside, Celestia of the Bandil family, only 12 years old, and with a trembling voice brings up the subject of his own murder. Celestia carelessly splashing water everywhere mid-pour, completely unaffected by the whole thing. Her reaction does nothing to slow him down. A fierce determination takes hold of him, and he makes his decision right then and there. Celestia will be part of whatever plan comes next. She does not take this well at all. Celestia snaps a ruler taut between her gloved hands, fixes him with a hard expression, and begins listing his past offenses one by one. He has publicly insulted lower-ranking nobles, a memory that draws a cruel laugh from him even now. He tried and failed to court a marquis's daughter. Worst of all, he once splashed water on a saint. She does admit, almost reluctantly, that he has seemed different lately, though in many other ways he hasn't changed at all. He tries to brush off the memories of his past behavior, deciding they are better forgotten. When Celestia suggests the simplest solution, that he just apologizes to everyone, he clutches his head in despair. Apologies are completely out of the question, especially where the saints of Mellisto are concerned. These are not people who let things go easily. They lead the largest church on the entire continent and carry enormous amounts of mana, making them powerful in healing, offense, and defense alike. The thought of facing their grudge is overwhelming. He falls face first onto the bed and slams his fist into the mattress, frustrated that he was given a second chance at life inside a video game world and still ended up in the worst possible situation. Then something shifts in his thinking. He has played this game thoroughly, going through every route, every secret, and every danger it has to offer. He knows how to grow stronger, which characters are the most dangerous, and exactly where each of them is vulnerable. That knowledge is his real advantage. He jumps to his feet with a wide, fanged grin and announces his new goal. He will become so powerful that nobody in this world can kill him. And to do that, training must start right away. His declaration that he will become the ultimate villain leaves Celestia standing in the doorway with no idea what to make of any of it. Training begins immediately, but the early results are deeply discouraging. His first attempt at using his power produces nothing but a tiny, weak flame cupped in his palms. He stares at it in disbelief, struggling to accept that this is all he has to work with. Celestia watches with visible concern as the flame dies out, leaving behind only a wisp of ash. Before his frustration can even settle, things get worse. He suddenly bursts into full flames, his screams filling the room. Celestia remains completely unbothered and cheerfully suggests they have a whole roast pig for dinner that evening. He moves his training to the Black Feather Forest near Bandil territory, this time wearing heavy armor and standing in front of a large, dangerous beast. His thinking is straightforward. Fighting powerful monsters is the fastest way to gain the experience he needs, and he explains this reasoning out loud to Celestia, who stands beside him with a completely blank expression. He faces off against a wolf-like creature with sword and shield in hand, bracing as it lunges at him with terrifying speed. The hit is hard, but he pushes back with everything he has, shouting that he is not afraid and repeating his vow to become the ultimate villain. The beast knocks him flat on his back, without much effort, and tilts its head at him in apparent confusion, while Celestia watches with quiet exhaustion. Lying there on the ground, a basic rule of the game comes back to him. There are no shortcuts to leveling up. The only way to raise his stats is through direct combat, again and again. If he keeps fighting, he will get stronger. That is simply how it works. The thought gets him back on his feet, and to Celestia's visible surprise, he strikes the beast down with one powerful blow, declaring that even someone like him can become stronger. A year goes by, and the townspeople begin to notice, though not in any favorable way. Gossip spreads easily through the town. People talk about how he has apparently been setting himself on fire, how he keeps going against Julius's teachings, and how it would be better for everyone if a monster just dealt with him already. The general feeling is one of tired indifference, as long as his behavior does not cause trouble for anyone else. Most people would rather ignore him, and several quietly hope he will skip the evening's party altogether. While the townspeople talk, Celestia is carrying out her duties with impressive strength, hauling 2 enormous bundles of logs across the grounds. She brings them to a secluded building and announces with some effort that these are the last logs for the day. At that moment, a figure wrapped completely in bandages stumbles out of a nearby kiln, crying out in pain, his body still faintly smoking from the heat. He raises a hand and thanks Celestia warmly for her help as always. She responds with concern, pointing out that his daily habit of climbing into the kiln is responsible for some very strange rumors spreading around the area. The painful training is, however, producing real results. Ix steps out looking genuinely different, wiping sweat from his brow and thanking Celestia for a towel. He announces with confidence that the process is making him stronger. Celestia points out that the towel was not meant for him, but he presses on regardless, eager for her to confirm how effective the training has been. She gives his method a name on the spot, the sauna diet, and observes that it is certainly doing its job quickly. He touches his cheek with a satisfied expression, noting that it is doing wonders for his appearance. Pleased with his progress, he moves to show what he has learned. A small, unsteady flame appears on his fingertip, and he announces proudly that he can now hold it for a few seconds, urging Celestia to watch his full power. Celestia immediately cuts him off and directs his attention to her instead, launching into an explanation of how magic works. There are 7 basic forms: red, blue, green, yellow, purple, black, and white, and within those, 4 ranks: beginner, intermediate, advanced, and ultimate. A person's natural affinity, she explains, is what determines how far they can go. Mastering advanced magic as an adult is already considered a real achievement, while ultimate magic has only ever been reached by a handful of people across the entire continent. Before Ix can take any of this in, Celestia suddenly remembers something important. She informs him that he needs to get ready immediately for a party that evening, since a saint will be attending. He reacts with outrage at the last-minute notice, demanding to know why she waited until the day itself to tell him. She clarifies that this is not the same saint he once splashed with water, but simply a guest at a regular high society event. The clarification does nothing to calm him down. His mind fills with panic as he pictures a dangerous opponent, and a terrible realization sets in. This is happening far too soon. He was supposed to be safe until school started, and somehow things are already moving off course. Pushing past his fear, he announces that he is heading into battle, counting on her. As he runs off, she notices with alarm that the towel he is wearing is not flame-resistant. Sure enough, his own power sets him on fire the next moment, and he screams for help. Celestia reacts instantly, dumping a heavy bucket of water over him. He ends up flat on the ground, soaking wet and sputtering, with the empty bucket sitting over his head. Celestia looks down at him and calmly wonders whether he will actually be able to manage on his own. As she turns and walks away, a sharp, knowing look crosses her face. She reflects that this is still better than real babysitting, especially since someone has clearly been cutting down the number of monsters wandering near the town. Ix, sitting on the ground with a wooden bucket stuck on his head, understands well enough that Celestia does not need his help for that. Meanwhile, in the capital city of Azabane in the kingdom of Phenelia, Celestia walks through the woods and quietly thinks about how much her master has changed. He has completely stopped hitting her. Instead, he has thrown himself into improving, studying magic with the mages, training in swordsmanship alongside the knights, and even keeping up with her during her daily jog. These changes give her a quiet sense of happiness. He has also stopped getting angry when she moves away from his side while they are outside. The image of who he used to be sits sharply against who he is becoming. With quiet resolve, she reminds herself of her own purpose. All she has ever known is how to swing a sword. That resolve was shaped long ago on the day she herself was abandoned, only to find another soul left to the very same fate. Her thoughts are cut short by a group of threatening figures blocking her path. Their leader steps forward and demands with open contempt that she, this little girl, guide them to the party venue. At that same moment, a grand procession arrives at the estate. A carriage pulled by a magnificent winged beast signals the arrival of a saint from the Malisto church, with knights lined up in formation along the path. A woman with dark hair and a blindfold steps out from the carriage, and her presence brings immediate silence and reverence. An attendant's voice rings out, ordering everyone to bow in honor of Saint Ulmilea. Elsewhere, Ix is lying on the floor in full panic. He accepts with grim clarity that things are not going according to plan, but sees no other option. His great strategy is to retreat into his bed and wrap himself entirely in blankets. A bad feeling grows stronger as the situation starts to resemble something familiar from the game. Back in the forest, the thugs surrounding Celestia are already being thrown off. Their leader roars in frustration, unable to understand how a single child is holding all 8 of them back. Celestia moves through them like a storm of steel. In the world of this game, someone as incompetent as Ixis could only ever be a nuisance to the heroes, and the one reason for that, Celestia. She is a naturally gifted fighter born with an unmatched talent for combat, the ultimate sword, a final obstacle so powerful she could stand against the main characters themselves. That, however, is a story for another time. In the present, her focus breaks for just a moment as she picks up the faint sound of water beneath her feet. It is the only warning she gets. A geyser bursts from the ground directly under her, throwing her into the air. She lands hard on the wet earth. The leader stands over her and remarks condescendingly that while she clearly has talent, she lacks experience. The possibility of an ambush never even crossed her mind, and that made his job easy. He reveals that his only goal was to knock her down, which he accomplished using water magic channeled through a beast-headed gauntlet on his arm. He stops himself, muttering that he is saying too much, and then pauses, noting with something unreadable in his voice that she looks to be about the same age as his own child. Standing over the defeated Celestia, the thug leader decides his next move is to force her into giving up information about the security arrangements. He turns to his subordinate and orders him to clean up the blood and any other traces of the fight. As he walks away from her, he lays out a cruel plan. Once they are done with her, they will feed her to monsters and use frenzy beasts to create chaos at the event. Lying on the cold ground, something becomes clear in Celestia's mind. In a moment like this, she knows it is on her to stop this assassination attempt on the saint. Her thoughts drift to a memory from long before her master changed. A young Ix, sweating but determined, is being taught swordsmanship by a young Celestia, an arrangement he himself had asked for. He looks straight at her and asks for another chance. The memory then shifts to Celestia standing over a defeated Ix with a small smirk, privately admitting to herself that she really did beat him up. Shortly after, he is stuffing his face with food, cheeks puffed out, and when Celestia notices him staring and points it out, he manages a muffled apology through a full mouth. The memory fades and pulls her back to the harsh present. The thug leader looms over her and announces his plan to wake her up by breaking her fingers. Before he can act on it, Celestia breaks into hysterical laughter and points at how ridiculous his face looks. He barely has time to react before a figure blurs past, a draconic aura bursting into existence, and a powerful kick connects hard with his body, sending him flying. Ixes has arrived. The thug leader staggers, his mind struggling to process what just happened. He cannot work out where this enormous amount of mana is coming from, wondering if it belongs to the Knight Captain or someone from the church, convinced that his plan could not have been leaked. The force radiating off this newcomer is not just strong, it is completely overwhelming, blasting outward and pinning the already fallen Saint Ulmalea even harder into the ground. Nearby, Ix stands in the middle of the chaos and addresses Celestia, who has dropped to one knee before him, with mild irritation about whether she put his outfit on correctly. The thugs immediately react to his appearance. The subordinate loudly calls him a coward who ran from the saint, and the leader piles on, naming him as Ix, a fool that other nobles despise, a talentless brat with no friends. The string of insults hits surprisingly hard, and Ixes actually drops to his knees under the weight of them, as though physically struck. He stops Celestia before she can urge him to step back. What comes to his mind then is something he recognizes directly from the game. The attack on the saint was supposed to be carried out by ordinary bandits. The fact that these people are something else entirely means the real antagonists here are a group called Diales, a cult that opposes the Church of Melisto under the belief that God is gone. The thug leader overhears this and demands to know how a mere noble's brat could possibly have that kind of information. Ixes ignores him and turns to Celestia, reassuring her that her candle-like magic will not be needed here. He states with complete confidence that he is stronger than all of them, and to understand why, it helps to know how magic ranks work. There are 4 levels: beginner, intermediate, advanced, and ultimate, and the higher the rank, the larger and more destructive the magic becomes. Steady effort can push someone further, but reaching the very top still requires natural talent. Ixis, however, is a different case entirely. By repeatedly bathing his body in flames as a form of extreme training, He has pushed past the limits of what natural talent alone can achieve. The power he releases is so massive that it draws the attention of a nearby adventurer, a horned woman who can only stare and mutter that what she is seeing should not be possible. Her shock is completely justified. Ix has gone beyond intermediate magic and brings forth a colossal giant made entirely of flame. This is advanced primary color magic, a soul garb manifestation known as anima incarna. With a single breath from its master, the fiery giant responds and unleashes a devastating blast of flame, powerful enough to reduce people to ash in an instant. The adventurer and her companions charge forward in response, launching their own attack against the enormous fiery creature with grim determination. At the same time, the thug leader, face twisted with fury, demands to know what is happening. Ixes calmly suggests he simply turn around and run. The leader refuses. He screams that the saint who denied them healing is just beyond those flames, and that he will make Ixes pay for that smirk on his face. Ix watches the outburst while pulling Celestia close to him. He acknowledges the man's reasons, but the moment the thug registers what Ix has done, pulling the maid protectively against him, his expression shifts to pure shock. The look on Ix's face hardens into something cold. He states plainly that the man has made a fatal mistake by laying a hand on his maid, and promises to repay him for it. As he speaks, the flame giant's massive hand closes in on the terrified thug leader, whose face twists into a scream of pure horror. The summoned creature releases its full power, and a massive, fiery explosion swallows the entire area. When the fire clears, a young girl with long, light hair stands looking up at Ix in disbelief. She addresses him and wants to know why he came to save her. The question pulls up a memory. Another figure with slicked-back hair who had grabbed her, declaring he had been hoping for someone to show up so he could have an audience for his abilities. The girl had cried out as he seized her. Back in the present, Ix holds her gently and explains that he came because something felt wrong, and he grew worried. He adds that walking away from a girl in trouble is simply not something he is capable of doing. His straightforward and sincere answer moves her deeply, and she quietly cries while leaning against him. Far below, the source of everything that was done to her has been completely destroyed. The thugs are nothing but charred remains scattered across scorched earth. Safe in his arms, she takes a long, steadying breath, her ordeal finally over. Ix looks ahead with a fierce grin and reflects that this is a fantasy world, and no one should ever make the mistake of underestimating it. Sometime later, the same girl walks toward a distant structure identified as the ancient Sky Castle. She thinks back to his promise to show her his determination, and privately acknowledges that he has truly gotten stronger. As she approaches, she finds the path blocked by the enormous corpse of a slain beast. Standing on top of it, clad in armor and wearing a fierce grin, is Ix. He declares his intention to grow even stronger, vowing that the day will come when no one in the entire world can kill him. Looking up at him, she recognizes just how deeply he has changed. That transformation, she understands, is the direct result of his unwavering determination. Nearby, Celestia watches the whole scene with a quiet smile, remarking that while his appearance has certainly changed, she suspects the contents of his head remain exactly the same. A hero blessed by the goddess brings down the Demon King with a legendary silver blade. Two women are watching as this story gets retold. One of them is a knight who points out that heroes seem to be universally loved among knights. The other is Celestia, who listens with complete attention, privately admitting a deep admiration for the hero and finding herself curious about what kind of person he actually was. Somewhere else, Ix takes stock of the fact that 2 full years have gone by since his reincarnation. He thinks about the version of himself that trained without a single break, all so the heroines would never get the opportunity to end his life. One of those heroines, a woman dressed in a nun's habit, carries a fond memory of that same man. Ixes now stands prepared for whatever lies ahead. The story moves to a grand party thrown by the Bandil family to mark an anniversary of the Knight's Order. The guests move freely through the celebration, but Ix stays well apart from all of it, too awkward and out of place to mix in. That does not last. A woman in a jester's costume seizes him from behind and makes it abundantly clear that if he does not participate, she is the one who will face consequences for it. Ix is unhappy about being there at all. He only came because Celestia had told him none of the heroines would be attending. Unable to cope with the atmosphere, Ix does something unexpected. He begins telling the crowd a story. It is about a man from the past who was hated by everyone around him, until the devotion of his maid reshaped who he was, and who later used a sword of flame to defend her when danger came. While he narrates, the jester woman throws herself into performing the tale, jumping forward with a sword and bellowing that no one should ever dare touch her woman. The crowd goes wild with cheers. Somewhere in that crowd, Celestia listens with a racing heart, entirely swept up in the story of this hero and the woman by his side. The performance does not stay on track for long. The jester glances back with a puzzled look, drawing an irritated reaction from Ix, who wants to know what she thinks she is doing. She ignores him completely, hops up onto a nearby table, and addresses a small group of onlookers, specifically, one man among them. That man is Ix, who returns her look with a smirk. He acknowledges her being there, but raises the question of why the dramatic performance was necessary. She brushes past the comment, and the curious nun standing beside her presses to know what comes next in the story. Ix's smirk stretches further as he points out that with no saint in sight, the question of what he might do next is an open one. The jester's face falls from bright excitement into stunned, wide-eyed confusion as she tries to make sense of what he is implying. Then a new face appears and greets Ix with a smirk, making a pointed reference to the water incident from before. Ix goes rigid. His mind moves fast as he takes a proper look at who these two women are. The first is Saint Amelia Garrett of Melisto, personally blessed by the goddess with healing abilities that surpass anything ordinary and tied to the most powerful figures across the continent. The second is Alice Carmine, daughter of the Marquis and heir to the largest commercial enterprise on the Argasto continent. Ix remembers the history he has with both of them, and the understanding that either one of these heroines has the capacity to kill him, depending on how the story unfolds, lands on him with crushing weight. He does not stick around and removes himself from the situation immediately. The jester watches him disappear, and notes that he is every bit as chaotic as she remembered. Saint Amelia takes in the venue around her with genuine delight, expressing appreciation for this place as the continent's biggest trading center. She folds her hands and wonders aloud whether the future hero might already be standing somewhere in this very crowd. She looks to the jester for input, who gives a vague and non-committal response with a single drop of sweat sliding down her face. Amelia's attention then shifts to a nearby group, where a woman with a thick fur collar offers an apology on behalf of her future captain and extends an invitation to join them. The invitation goes unacknowledged as Amelia turns back to the jester and laments that the Bandil Knights Order seems to be made up of nothing but children and people obsessed with physical strength. The jester privately concludes that the saint is an adorable fool. Her own expression changes the next moment, though, lighting up with pure excitement at the mention of an adventure ahead. This reaction connects to something from the past. Saint Amelia, the most widely followed holy figure on the continent, once had a bucket of water emptied over her head by Ixis. Despite that and other such incidents, she has always kept herself out of political conflicts. The reason she can afford to do that is straightforward. Her healing ability gives her more real authorities than any king currently holds. She is one of the chosen maidens of the world's goddess, Melisto, and her safety is treated as an absolute priority. Any harm that comes to her would be enough to spark open war between the kingdom and the Church of Melisto. Ix knows all of this, but as the full picture of his situation settles over him, he realizes with creeping horror that he has already slipped up badly. He finds himself standing in a desolate, snow-covered landscape, leaning on his greatsword just to stay upright and catching his breath. His thoughts go to the original Ix, the source of all the problems he is now dealing with. He thinks about looking down at that boy sinking in water, understanding plainly that he had caused damage beyond recovery. He knows that no matter what he does from this point, that history does not change. Standing at the edge of a swirling vortex, he accepts that trying to build goodwill with anyone at this stage would be a completely pointless effort. He lies back against the snow and stares up at the sky, sitting with the reality of his situation. The game's story has always led to one outcome for his character: trouble, then death. With only 1 to 3 years of life remaining by his estimate, and barely half a year left before the main story kicks off at the academy, the weight of it all presses down hard. But the despair does not hold. Something shifts in him, and a hard, new resolve takes over. He gets to his feet and declares outright that he will not die in a world like this. That declaration is directed at something that has just emerged from the trees, Foglanil, ruler of the skewered frost corpses. Ix draws his greatsword and faces it head-on, telling the creature plainly that it is about to become his means of survival. The massive beast lets out a low growl and holds perfectly still, regarding the lone figure standing before it. Then, to Ix's complete bewilderment, it turns around and runs. He stares as the ground shakes with its retreat. A familiar voice breaks through his confusion. Celestia has appeared behind him, and calmly observes that he seems to be trembling. He puts it together instantly. If something that powerful is fleeing, she is the only possible explanation. He urgently tells her they need to move. In a snowy forest nearby, Alice Carmine urges Saint Amelia to get away from the area immediately. Before she can follow through on that, she spots two figures in the distance and demands to know who is there. The question goes unanswered as terror spreads across Saint Amelia's face. She understands with sudden dread that something powerful and dangerous has found them. Alice moves to get Amelia to safety without hesitation, but before she can act, a dark blur of a creature lunges from the shadows and violently throws one of their companions aside. The sudden chaos does not escape Ix. From where he stands at a distance, he watches the attack play out. The sight of the dark, writhing tendrils triggers immediate recognition. He knows this creature from his previous life. What follows that recognition is a sharp and unsettling realization. This event is happening well before the game's story was ever supposed to begin. He had been doing things the original Ix never did, but he had not believed his choices would reach far enough to change the main story itself. The truth is now undeniable. The scenario is unfolding, but it has shifted in ways he never anticipated. The monster comes fully into view. It is the Saint Eater, a secret boss from the second half of the game, with a low chance of appearing, known for relentlessly targeting Saint-type characters and for driving countless players to frustration. Ix turns to Celestia, who is already holding a sword. He wants to know what she is doing, still struggling to accept that this enemy has shown up this far ahead of schedule. She keeps her eyes on the fight unfolding before her and states simply that she is going to help the people who are already down, and adds with calm certainty that she is confident her sword is more than sturdy enough for what comes next. Celestia turns to Ix with a confident smirk and wants to know whether he actually intends to save them. Ix looks toward the threat ahead and confirms that he does, seeing it as a solid test of his current strength and a useful source of experience. He tightens his grip on his sword and readies himself for what is coming. The massive, shadowy form of the Saint Eater Jotun towers over the landscape, its presence alone enough to break the surroundings apart. Amid a field of rubble not far away, Alice Carmine checks on Saint Amelia and notices she seems distracted. Amelia looks down and takes the blame for the situation they are now in. Alice immediately puts a hand on her shoulder and cuts her off, refusing to let her apologize. She states firmly that a saint is not simply something to be protected. A saint holds immense power of her own, and that power matters. As Jotun's claw comes sweeping down, Alice steps in front of Amelia with her sword drawn, declaring that she will be the one doing the protecting here. Amelia's mind drifts back to her past. She remembers her daily routine, healing people without question through the day, then staying up late into the night, memorizing every scripture she could find. She used to think that, as demanding as her work was, it still did not come close to the legendary difficulty of what the hero accomplished in defeating the Demon King. Her favorite part of that story was always the very beginning, the moment the hero first appeared before the revered Saint Cornelia. As a young girl, Amelia had pictured that scene clearly, a brightly lit doorway, and from it a young man in a horned helmet, stepping forward, reaching out his hand, and telling the saint that the world needed saving and that he wanted her by his side. Coming back to the present, Amelia finishes the thought and looks at Alice, quietly grateful to at least have someone willing to listen to her. Her resolve firms as she faces the beast. She acknowledges that the world is full of all kinds of people, those she connects with and those she does not, and that saving everyone is not something within her reach. But she believes her power was given to her for exactly that purpose, and she holds on to that. Below, Alice calls out her name, and the sound pulls Amelia's mind to another memory. A young hero stands beside her and releases a spell. Intermediate Holy White Magic, Holy Shine Ring Reme Supero. He mentions almost casually that his combat ability at that point is only a fraction of what it could be. The magic tears through the air and a colossal giant of fire takes shape, ripping the shadowy beast Jotun apart completely. A younger Amelia and her companion watch in stunned silence as the creature is destroyed. As the fire dies down, the hero turns to her with a calm smile and remarks on how beautiful it all was. The moment barely has time to settle before a new wave of shadowy monsters appears. He leans slightly toward the young Amelia, eyes already fixed on the new threat, and tells her he appreciates her admiration. Then, with an almost eager expression, he declares that he would welcome a fight like this anytime. The memory breaks, and she is back in the present. Standing before her is a different man entirely, and yet the moment she sees him, something clicks. She breathes his name in disbelief. Ix Bandil. She stares at him, and Alice, visibly unsettled, wants to know why he has not fled from the danger like everyone else. Ix smirks with a predatory edge and explains that his nerves are not particularly cooperative and seem to have run off without him. Then he looks directly at both women and remarks that they, on the other hand, look like a very promising main course. He turns to face the Saint Eater Jotun, a terrifying creature built from writhing black tendrils and a stark white deer-like skull. With a wide grin, he points out to Alice that there is no reason to even think about running. Alice wants to know whether he can actually handle something like this. He brushes the concern aside and says they will simply have to find out, then charges forward with his sword drawn and roars a challenge at the creature. He leaps and brings his blade down in a powerful arc aimed directly at the Saint Eater's skull-like face. The sword connects cleanly and cuts straight through it. Despite the direct and solid hit, the creature does not go down. Ix's lands with a smirk, noting to himself that the physical strike did not seem to affect it in any meaningful way. He shifts his approach immediately, raises a hand, and unleashes a beginner red magic spell, Flash Fire Detonus. A burst of dark energy explodes around the monster. The beast's tendrils grow back instantly and lash out, coiling around his body. This, he realizes, is the true nature of Jotun. Nearby, Alice and Amelia both cry out in shock, watching the creature's regeneration with alarm. Ixis, however, reacts in the opposite way entirely. A look of wild, unhinged excitement spreads across his face as he kicks off the monster and shouts that something capable of regenerating like this must be worth an enormous amount of experience points. The reaction leaves both Alice and Saint Amelia completely speechless. Celestia watches the chaotic scene from nearby, one question turning over steadily in her mind. Is this truly Ix Bandil fighting in front of her? The ferocity, the strange and unsettling joy. It is a side of him she has never seen before. Saint Amelia beside her can only gasp, hands flying to her mouth in horror. Her shock is answered by a thunderous crack. Ix's cross-shaped weapon shatters against the force of the Saint Eater, and the impact throws him backward, sending him crashing hard into the snow-covered ground. He grunts in pain. Blood runs down his face, and yet a cold, calm smile forms on his lips because he already knows that a secret boss-class monster was never going to go down that easily. The blood streaks across his face as the smile holds. Ixis is on the ground, badly wounded, being tended to by Saint Amelia. Even in that state, he looks over at his companion and checks whether he is all right. Amelia turns her attention to Ix the moment she sees his condition, her eyes wide, and immediately offers to heal him. He refuses her outright and tells her to stay back if she is not able to fight. Amelia pushes back, insisting that even without combat ability, she still has something to contribute. She ignores his order entirely and declares that she has the power to save him. A brilliant light pours from her outstretched hand and washes over Ix, and he feels the pain and damage coursing through his body begin to pull back. His body is restored. Ix thanks the saint, takes a sword from the still recovering Bandil, and assesses what he is working with. His usual firepower falls just short of what is needed for a decisive strike, but he has an idea. He channels his energy and announces himself as the strongest villain, and what follows is something Amelia has never seen before. She understands now that while Ixa may have no natural talent, his mana has grown to a staggering degree through the sheer brutality of his training. The problem is that this power is completely unstable. He has almost no control over the raw energy he commands, and the force of it manifests in a way that mirrors the chaotic form of the Saint Eater Jotun itself. It is a double-edged situation. The very power he unleashes damages his own body, cracking and breaking his form under its own weight. But the circumstances are different now. Ix has never risked using his full output before because doing so without support would be suicidal. Now, however, he has Amelia standing right beside him, the greatest healer in the world. For the first time, he can actually afford to go all in. Amelia's expression shifts into something caught between awe and terror. Gritting his teeth, Ix announces that he is raising the voltage and warns that if he misses, every single one of them will be turned to ash together. He extends a hand towards Saint Amelia, a confident smirk fixed on his face, and invites her, calling her heroine, to stand with him. She stares up at him in stunned silence, unable to find words as the invitation hangs in the air, with the monstrous Jotun looming before them all. He declares that what he is about to do is nothing more than simple science. Amelia cries out for him to wait, but the process is already underway. By combining green wind magic with red fire magic and introducing pure oxygen into the mix, he maximizes combustion. He then compresses that superheated flame inside molten rock, building a core that reaches temperatures above 6,000 degrees. That incredible energy solidifies into a blade of shining silver. He surges forward with the weapon in hand and drives it into the beast. The blade connects and releases a cataclysmic explosion of white-hot power that completely engulfs Yotun. Inside the blast, the monster's armored carapace begins to shatter and disintegrate under the sheer force of the impact. A silver streak cuts clean through the lingering smoke when it is all over. From a distance, a woman with reptilian features watches the battle with her eyes fixed on the attack. She murmurs that it looked just like a shining silver sword, and her words call up an image from legend of blades clashing in a shower of sparks just like something out of a fairy tale. Emilia, witnessing Ix wield that kind of power, stares with an expression of complete astonishment. One word escapes her lips, hero. As the battle continues, a new figure enters the fight and unleashes a torrent of power against Yotun. This man is Militia Ix Vance, and he channels an advanced form of magic, declaring that while he does not know why the creature showed up this early, it is time for it to leave the stage. He screams the name of his technique, the white-hot proclamation flame sword, his face twisted with the sheer force of the energy pouring out of him. The attack ends in a blinding explosion of white light that tears through the entire landscape. Alice and Saint Amelia watch from a distance, unable to do anything but stare as the world ahead of them is swallowed by the blast. When the light finally clears, the terrain is a wasteland. Standing amid the destruction is Ix, his cape tattered but his body otherwise untouched. He smirks to himself and remarks casually that he appears to have overcooked the main dish. He points forward with a grin and calls out to the others, wanting to know if they saw what he just did, and declaring plainly that this is his true strength. With that point made, he turns around without ceremony and sprints off into the snowy woods, waving a dismissive goodbye over his shoulder as he goes. Saint Amelia is left completely speechless. She and Alice stand watching him disappear, their faces still carved with shock and confusion over the overwhelming power and utterly bizarre behavior they just witnessed. The moment stirs something in Ix as he moves through the snow. A memory surfaces, a younger version of himself sitting with a woman who has cat-like ears. She holds his hand gently and tells him plainly that he looks like a fool, leaving him to sit with that observation in visible confusion. The memory carries a sharp sting when it resurfaces, and Ix grabs his head with a grunt. The full picture of his past relationships becomes clear at this point. He had relentlessly pursued Alice Carmine out of a stubborn infatuation, while at the same time nursing a deep jealousy towards St. Emilia's widespread influence and popularity. Another brief memory cuts through, a man cradling the limp, wounded body of the jester woman. Back in the present, Ix sits quietly, caught somewhere inside his own thoughts. Celestia watches him and remarks that anyone staring at him that intently would find nothing more than a very cute face looking back. He snaps out of it with a slight smile, conceding that she is right, and then turns it back on her without missing a beat, telling her directly that she is very cute too. A memory of Alice Carmine cuts in sharply. She is gritting her teeth and angrily tightening a bandage around a young man's arm. When he cries out in pain, she snaps that the injury is perfectly fine, especially if he still has the energy to complain about it. That scene fades, giving way to the sight of a grand winged airship moving silently through a night sky full of stars. Aboard it, Alice and Amelia stand at a large window together. Amelia breaks the quiet and asks whether Alice is thinking about Ix. Alice considers this for a moment and admits that he was genuinely cool, though a trace of hesitation remains in her voice. She confirms with Amelia that Ix is the same age as both of them. A warm smile spreads across Amelia's face at that. She concludes happily that this means they will definitely cross paths with him again at the academy. Alice's excitement is immediate and unguarded as their airship glides over the sprawling city below. She cannot wait. Amelia's response is far more subdued. Their destination comes into view at last, the magnificent Carid Lily Academy. A woman's voice rings out across the hall, welcoming the new freshman class to Carid Lily Academy and informing them that they are there to learn for the sake of the Finalia Kingdom. With that, the enrollment ceremony comes to a close. 3 years have passed since Ix was reincarnated into the body of the game's most despised villain, and the day he has been dreading has finally arrived. The main story of the game is now beginning. Ix takes in the moment while Celestia stands beside him reading through the student list. The names on it are anything but comforting. Leona, the second princess of Finalia. Amelia, saint of the world's largest church. Julius, regarded as the second coming of the hero. And then there is Ix himself, listed as the most detested. Celestia privately thinks she wants all of their autographs. Ixis, meanwhile, is staring at the handcuffs currently locked around his wrist. Celestia explains without any sympathy that they are there because he would absolutely skip the ceremony otherwise. Due to his complete lack of common sense, she has been personally assigned to ensure his attendance, and if he fails to show up, she gets expelled alongside him. The situation could not be more straightforward. The reason Ix dreads being here is equally straightforward. His fate in this game is already written. He is supposed to be killed by the heroines at the academy. That reality leads him to the obvious thought that the simplest solution would be to simply never show up. The answer sheet for the new hero runs about 5 meters long, which does nothing to improve his mood. Before he can dwell on it further, a voice calls out his name from behind. He turns and his stomach drops. It is Saint Amelia Garrett of Mellisto, greeting him warmly and pointing out that it has been about half a year since they last met. Ix's mind immediately goes to the fact that this particular heroine is one of the people capable of ending his life, and he calls out after her instinctively as she approaches, with Celestia flying through the air behind him, handcuffs in hand. His mind goes back to that encounter half a year ago, when he killed the monster that had been attacking the saint and said several very bold things to her in the aftermath. He is fairly certain that earned him her anger, and now standing at Carrot Lily Academy, a world he recognizes clearly from the game, the anxiety of it all presses down on him. He mutters to himself that he needs this world to match exactly what he knows, while Celestia behind him is silently fuming. She gives him one last chance to go somewhere before heading to the apology he owes the saint. He asks to visit the Academy's central garden fountain first. Celestia immediately demands to know if he is taking her on a water fountain date, which he shuts down immediately. He tells her he simply read about it in a book and needs to see it, then steps inside. Celestia notices a hidden entrance beneath the fountain, and Ix explains that the Academy is built across different layers. A third voice then joins the conversation. A lady appears and suggests enthusiastically that it must be a dungeon and proposes they go inside. Ix turns and stares. It is Saint Amelia. He demands to know how she got there, pointing out that he ran with everything he had to get away from her. Celestia informs him flatly that the reason the saint followed is that he did not greet her properly and that his rudeness is going to get him beheaded. Amelia calmly tells them both to settle down, addressing Ix as her hero. He rejects the title immediately. Amelia explains that half a year ago he saved both her life and Alice's, and she came specifically to express her gratitude. Ixis asks where Alice is. Amelia explains that since Alice's family runs the world's greatest merchant operation, people from the church can only observe her from a distance at the moment. Celestia then points out with minimal tact that Amelia must not have any other friends if she came all the way here alone. Amelia asks her simply to call her Amelia, then turns toward the dungeon entrance with bright enthusiasm and suggests they head in. Ixis stops her immediately. He tells her firmly that it is far too early for her to be venturing in there, that it would be a serious problem if anything happened to her, and that she should go back to the safety of the classroom. Amelia's response is to summon her personal weapon. Ix panics and asks whether she is actually trying to start a fight, then immediately apologizes. Amelia turns to Celestia and suggests they go. While Celestia processes the fact that this kind of thing keeps happening to her today, the three of them reach the dungeon, the fecundity prison of many faces. Amelia notes the strange threads stretched all through the place. Monsters appear almost immediately and she steps forward with confidence, declaring she will handle them. That confidence shifts the moment she realizes just how strong they actually are. She insists she will not fall behind, but Celestia shouts a warning from behind as one of the monsters launches an attack, sending both Ix and Amelia stumbling in shock. Amelia recovers quickly and spots a treasure box, lunging for it with excitement, only to discover it is trapped. All three of them end up completely covered in arrows and weapons. Amelia looks over at Ix and tells him cheerfully that he responded much faster than he did half a year ago. Celestia remarks that she feels strangely restless. Amelia apologizes for getting carried away, then admits quietly that this is her first time doing something like this with friends, and that she is genuinely having fun. Ix looks confused by that. Celestia turns to him and points out that he of all people should be happy to hear it, given that he also has almost no friends. Ixis firmly disputes this and lists his social credentials. A perfect attendance award from the knights, regular barbecues with the maids, shopping trips with them too. Celestia remains unconvinced. Before the argument can go further, Amelia calls out from nearby. She has found pieces of a uniform. Ix wonders aloud whether a student got lost down here. Celestia examines it closely and notes it is fresh and that she can still pick up a human scent on it. Whoever this belongs to must be close. The group immediately begins moving. As they run, Ix turns something over in his mind. He does not remember any event in the game where a student goes missing in this dungeon. The uncomfortable thought follows. Has his presence changed the scenario again? Just like the last time? Amelia suddenly shouts that she has found the student and bolts toward her. Celestia yells for her to wait, warning that they have no idea what else might be in the area. Amelia does not slow down. She reaches the student and pulls her close, assuring her that she is safe now. Then the dungeon boss appears directly in front of them. It is the Fecundity Prison's boss, False Face's Queen Mother Valjad, a creature that uses the shells of its dead kin as weapons and tears apart and devours anything in its path. Ix's mind races. This dungeon is originally meant to be tackled in the second half of the game, which means Amelia at her current level is dangerously underpowered here. More of a liability than an asset. He charges toward the beast immediately, shouting that he made a mistake bringing them here. Amelia tells him not to worry about her. He absolutely does worry. He knows her route in the game carries one of the highest difficulty ratings of all the heroines. Not just because of the powerful monsters, but because of the additional threats that come with her. The anti-Malisto cult, Diales, actively targets her. Former high-level warriors of the church come after her. Even the monsters themselves can be one-shotted by those enemies. In the game, letting the saint die was easy if a player made even one wrong move. But this is not the game. There are no continues in this world. Amelia charges at Valjad. She calls back to Ix and tells him to believe in her, then activates her advanced holy white magic. She screams the name of her technique, Holy Claw's treasure world, Militia Remesu, and declares that nothing will break through ever again. Ixes thinks back on what he knows about Amelia from the game. At this point in the story, she should be at a low level, nowhere near ready for something like this. But watching her now tells a different story entirely. She kept pace with him during a full sprint. She has been fighting monsters with her mace without slowing down, and right now she is holding off a boss-level attack on her own. The realization settles over him. She has been training hard for the past year, pushing herself specifically so she would not be helpless against the dangers of this world. Just like him. He moves toward her. Amelia waves at him as he approaches and explains her situation honestly. She has worked hard on healing and defense, but offensive magic is simply not something she has been able to master. She asks with a smile whether he would be willing to handle the killing. He replies that it cannot be helped and moves into position. Behind them, Celestia finishes cleaning up the remaining mob monsters and jumps in alongside him, telling him to let her know before he prepares his spell so she can keep him covered while he charges it. He thanks her, tells her he had faith in her, and begins building up something big, warning them both to get ready. He calls out to Amelia, she responds immediately, and together they bring it. He launches his advanced magic attack, Evil Blaze Lance Ixial Gladius, and Amelia follows through with her own advanced magic right behind it. The combination hits the boss with overwhelming force. Celestia looks at the aftermath and tells him flatly that was overkill. The dungeon begins to collapse. The student they rescued looks around at the falling ceiling and remarks dryly that she appreciates being saved, though it seems they will all be dying together anyway. Amelia immediately shouts for everyone to get around her and declares she will protect them all. Ix realizes with alarm that he was only planning to melt part of the dungeon, not bring the whole thing down, and starts blaming himself for the situation as the ceiling closes in above them. Then something unexpected happens. The rubble stops falling. It simply hangs in the air. Their teacher, like the same woman who welcomed the students at the enrollment ceremony, arrives and informs them she heard from other teachers that some students were missing, found them here, and is now observing what she describes as illicit activities among mixed company. She notes that everyone seems remarkably strong, which a colleague nearby calls insolent. A rock promptly falls on each of their heads. The teacher then instructs them to inform their homeroom teacher that they were found by instructor Zenas. Ix stares at her. Something about her feels familiar. Zenas looks directly back at him, calls him by name, and tells him to pay more attention to the origin point of his power, that if he had proper control over it, he would be significantly stronger. He responds with a quiet yes and files that away in his mind, quietly acknowledging that what just unfolded was essentially a basic student rescue event. As the three of them leave with the student they saved, the rescued girl reflects that this was quite a turn of events and that she never expected to run into a saint down there. She then looks at Zenas and remarks that she could have simply left them all to die. Zenas responds that she could never stand by and watch her precious students perish, then brings up something from 3 years ago. An incident where someone acted rashly and attempted to assassinate Sont Olmilea failed and was subsequently killed by an unknown party. The rescued student says she remembers it well and adds coldly that she had planned to cut down that person alongside the saint. Xanis notes that with two unpredictable elements now in the picture, their plans will need to change. Infiltrating the academy and preparing for the assassination will require a different approach. At that, the student removes her mask. She is completely unbothered, pointing out with a satisfied expression that getting a clear read on Saint Amelia's combat strength on her very first mission is actually a significant achievement. She adds, with a smile that sharpens as she says it, that every single one of them, including Ix, turned out to be stronger than anticipated. She then states plainly that she could have slit any of their throats at any moment had she chosen to. She is identified as a duesless combatant, gnashing a lota. Xenos responds that, had she done so, it would have been quietly covered up as an accident. She then reminds her students that the day of Melisto is fast approaching. There is a large first-year meet-and-greet event planned with minimal security, and their entire group, their small family of duesless, is already in position inside the academy. Standing before her is her student army, operating under the belief that God is gone. One of them mutters that it is finally time, though notes this is still their first real mission. Another warns Alada not to blow their cover after everything they went through to get inside. A third expresses worry that they keep adjusting their plans. Xenos addresses them all. She points out that making contact with the saint was not necessarily a setback. The Church of Melisto is not a single unified force, and their actual mission remains fixed. On the first day of spring, Melisto's Aurora, the day of the Dawn Festival, they will kill Saint Amelia and announce to the world exactly who Duesless is, on the most sacred day the Church holds. She declares it with open enthusiasm as her students watch closely. She adds that those who pride themselves on being the envy of the goddess will make a worthy sacrifice. On the other side of the academy, Amelia cheerfully points out to Ix and Celestia that her classroom is in a different direction. Ix stares at her. Celestia elbows him hard. He immediately says his goodbyes and watches her go, then heads to his own classroom with Celestia. Along the way, he realizes he never saw where the girl they rescued went. She had slipped off to her own class before he had a chance to think about it. He steps into the classroom and the chatter of students washes over him immediately. Voices carry clearly. Someone has heard he is a troublemaker and cannot believe it started on day one. Another calls him stuck up and suggests he probably runs to his parents to get people arrested. Celestia's expression darkens fast as she listens to it. Ix just wants everyone to stop. Celestia rounds on him and points out sharply that he is a noble and he is already causing a scene on the very first day of school, calling it a disgrace. He asks if they can deal with this tomorrow.
Here I am.